Spanish police, conducting a raid on human traffickers who lure women to Europe and then force them into prostitution.
Germany is often the destination because of the profits that they can make there.
They call Germany the brothel of Europe. It's where the highest prices are charged.
Since the COVID pandemic, prostitution in Europe has increasingly shifted to private apartments and hotel rooms. Because these spaces are difficult to monitor, they are favored by traffickers.
A lot of clients are violent, and we have an extremely high rate of assaults on prostitutes, including murder, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
This documentary accompanies the German police and other authorities in their attempts to free women from human traffickers. A growing number of victims come from Latin America. Sebastian Eichler is a senior officer with the police's organised crime division in the western German city of Mainz. As head of the human trafficking unit, he's well aware of these developments.
The task for me and my colleagues primarily involves finding potential victims of human trafficking here in Mainz and then taking action and providing police support.
Eichler tracks legal and illegal prostitution in the city. Joined by 2 female officers, he's about to inspect a number of local brothels and will be on the lookout for women from Central and South America. In particular, we're permitted to show him on camera, but his colleagues wish to remain anonymous.
We're off to a red light district.
Prostitution is not illegal in Germany. Brothels must have authorization, and sex workers need to be officially registered. The police and authorities have the right to carry out inspections at any time, without advance notice. But what exactly are they looking for?
We're looking for women who are willing and able to speak openly, to say they're being forced to do this and need help from the police.
Their search of this industrial block comes up empty. It's a difficult job and requires a lot of sensitivity.
We need to have that awareness, because we need people who can provide us with information. Say there might be a woman who was brought there by someone, and she has the proper documentation, but she's being forced to work there and made to hand over her earnings.
When we explain that we're there to help, sometimes a woman will say, "Yes, I know someone who that happened to."
The officers are inspecting a legal brothel. Many of the women here are from Latin America. The manager herself is originally from Colombia.
We're from the Criminal Investigation Department in Mainz, the Mainz Police Department, and we're here to check on the women to make sure they're okay. That's the most important thing. So if you notice any of them being forced to do something against their will, please give me a call.
Okay.
You can contact me confidentially and we can talk if there's anything on your mind, okay?
Okay.
How did the girls get here to you?
I've been doing this job for 35 years, and this is the best.
The female officers split up in order to talk to the sex workers privately, without the manager present.
If you work, the money you get, is it your money?
Yes, my money, yes.
Okay, and you can decide what you want. You can say no if you want. If you
yes,
don't want,
yes.
you say,
No,
okay.
no.
Okay, so
Yes.
you can decide what you want and what you make. Yeah.
Yes.
It's your decision. And you can say no.
Yes, no.
The women tell the officers they are here voluntarily and that they get to keep their earnings. They say they can turn down clients. There are 4 women from Colombia here today, all using Spanish passports. 3 rooms are for clients. A 4th room is their bedroom. And what do their services cost?
I'm a student.
Yes?
115.
And how many
Yes.
customers do you have a day?
For me,
Yes.
is 19.
19.
For the house, 16.
Okay.
Look.
On the surface, everything seems to be in order here. The women have documentation proving that they're allowed to engage in prostitution in Germany. But are they genuinely here of their own volition, or have they been coerced?
We're not here long enough to judge whether a woman is actually okay. They're pretty good at acting, which is part of their job, and sure, they do that. It's really difficult to see what's really going on. But it's always worth a try, and we've had cases where women said they wished we'd been there.
Just recently, we met a woman during an inspection who was about my age. She told us that she was pregnant but was still working there, and that really got to me. We offered to help her.
You get a feeling of utter despair when you start to realize what these women are going through. Sometimes they break down and start crying, and then you've at least reached that point where you can offer help and maybe be a lifeline for this woman, which is our objective, actually.
Back at the police headquarters, it's time for the follow-up paperwork. Writing reports, entering data, and forwarding the personal details of the women to colleagues in Spain to check. But inspecting legal brothels is only one part of the officer's job.
The illegal prostitution premises that we're always trying to track down are hotel rooms and apartments that are used as short-term rentals by what are possibly criminal gangs. The women are assigned to these locations for a certain time and have to prostitute themselves day and night, in many cases for over 20 hours at a time.
Those criminal networks have also caught the attention of sociologist Manuela Schon, who works with the Wiesbaden City Council on women's welfare. To improve support services, she performs systematic analysis of the prostitution market. This involves combing through internet advertisements.
I used to believe the newspapers that Wiesbaden was too well-to-do to have any prostitution. And then I realized that it even exists in my own neighborhood.
Germany's liberal legislation reduces the risk for human traffickers. Brothels and sex workers must be registered. But failure to register is only classified as a minor offence. And if women are found working in private apartments, they are the ones who have to pay the fines, as stipulated by law.
The areas shaded in red are where prostitution premises can be legally registered. We also mapped all properties offering sexual services. And as you can see, there are a lot of such places all across the city, especially in the centre of town.
An area where prostitution is not permitted.
About 70% of sex work takes place in unregistered premises, and organised networks ensure that there is sufficient supply available. It's not feasible that a woman from Latin America, say Colombia, would find these addresses on her own, especially when she doesn't speak the language.
The sociologist also finds evidence on online forums referring to intermediaries behind the scenes.
You can feel a bit sorry for the girl. It looks like she's the one replying to a WhatsApp inquiry. I also asked about things like a 69, kissing, and finishing on her face, and the answer was always everything included, no extra charges. So I was really looking forward to the appointment, and then the disappointment. No kissing, no 69. Then she said there was an agency involved, which is incredibly dishonest. We work hard for our money. It's not fair to take advantage. I really struggle to understand how someone clearly notices that there are handlers involved making false promises, but his only response is to feel duped. Instead of calling the police or considering that this might be human trafficking or pimping. I find the client's attitude stunning.
To track down the addresses and the women in question, she responds to ads and posts on WhatsApp. She and her colleagues then offer help in the relevant language. And that has increasingly meant using a Spanish translator. This ad is from a woman from Peru.
Have you already written to her?
Hi there, sweetie. I'm Valentina and have only just moved to Wiesbaden. My rates start at €100 for 30 minutes, 150 for an hour.
It's probably not her using the phone.
Perfect spelling?
That's our experience, that they don't speak a word of German.
Once a third party uses the phone, they can see how many clients the woman had without being physically present. And they can check how much money she must have earned.
The team's objective is to present trafficked women with options. First, they must gain their confidence, which is why they bring along little presents.
They help to break the ice. They have the city logo on them to show that we are really official. They include a name and a phone number the women can contact to ask for help, or if they need someone to talk to.
They'll be taking 3 bags with them today for 3 appointments with women from Latin America, in holiday apartments and hotels in the historic city centre.
These women are often extremely afraid when we visit them. You can see the panic in their eyes.
The large fines that can be levied for illegal prostitution and danger of deportation count among the women's fears. But the welfare team is not there for that.
Our approach is to care for these women as if they were our best friends. We help them to get a new start and realise their dreams. We're on our way to an apartment where there's always a rapid turnover of women, mostly from Latin America. One of them is from Peru. We want to see whether she'll open the door to us.
This is as far as our film team can go. We'll see Manuela Schahn again after the visit. Only a small number of women caught in these networks manage to escape. They're placed in victim protection programs or live in safe houses provided by support organizations. But there's a constant fear of being discovered. Criminal gangs may threaten the women's families back home. One survivor agrees to talk on the condition that her identity and location are kept secret. Both the woman and the support worker wish to remain anonymous. They meet in a garden somewhere in Germany. The 2 women speak in Spanish as the victim tells her story.
A friend offered me a job with a modeling agency in Europe. I had to submit an application along with photos, as well as proof of my vaccinations, including COVID. It all seemed to be above board. They booked a flight and a hotel for me. When I got there, they demanded my passport and said I now owed them €5,500, which I had to work off. They took me to a building and gave me a box of condoms. The building was full of cameras. I was sexually exploited for months, 24/7 without a break. They reminded me of this big debt and said I couldn't hide because they had people all over Europe. Plus, they knew where my family lived. Sorry, I need to take a short break.
In Madrid, Carmen González is the head of a special unit of Spain's Policía Nacional, or National Police. Her team is tasked with combating the criminal gangs who enslaved these women.
The number of victims doubled between 2020 and 2024, and the increase is particularly high among women from countries like Colombia and Venezuela. But the number of victims from Latin America in general is growing every year.
Police raids on apartments across the country have already freed many women from the clutches of the human traffickers. Officers often find similar scenes. Traumatized women, drugs, and suspiciously large amounts of cash.
Sí, aquí encontró, fue precisamente la compañera quien encontró.
Yes, it was my colleague here who discovered the money. The suspects had hidden it in the top of a cupboard, inside socks, in a hidden compartment.
The entire team is always present on raids like these. When they storm an apartment, what thoughts run through the officer's head?
We carry out operations like this once a month.
¡Policía, abra la puerta!
We're used to it. There's a rush of adrenaline when we go in, but we try to stay calm.
This is the aftermath of one such raid in February. The women found here were treated like slaves. They all slept in the living room and had to make themselves available to clients in other rooms day and night.
We want them to feel safe and for them to trust us so that they'll tell us about their situation. What we ultimately want is to free them from that state of being enslaved.
Sí. Buenos días, jefe. Sí, sobre.
Her boss calls to talk about a new case. It's come in via a helpline for victims of human trafficking, set up by the National Police Force and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A team of police officers is on hand to handle calls and take down any details provided. The latest call was made from Colombia by a man who says his cousin was forced into prostitution in Paris. Carmen Gonzalez and her colleagues have the man's phone number, and they now will call him back.
You say there's a hotel? Okay. Do you know which room? No. Do you have a name? I'll spell it. E-Z. Do we need a photo of her? Yes. Can you send a photo to my boss if you have one? Do you know which city she's being offered in?
In Paris?
She's in Paris.
The trafficker himself appears to be in Colombia. From there, he directs clients for the woman to a hotel in Paris.
The suspect is in Colombia and posts the ads with photos of the girls. The search results currently show 47 Colombian women working in Paris, and we need a photo to identify which one she is. We have to make sure that she's okay. So our priority right now is to locate the woman and check that she's not in danger.
While they do not yet have a photo of the woman, they do now have a name. They're headed for border control, the operations center for the National Police. They know the woman traveled recently from Colombia to Spain. She was probably taken from there to France by car. How are South American women like her lured to Europe?
The ongoing economic crises in these countries leave a lot of people in extreme poverty and with no chance of getting a job. So for many, going to Spain seems to be the only way out. The women believe they'll be able to work as carers, cleaners, or waitresses. But once they get to Spain, they're told they'll have to work as prostitutes and are forced to comply.
Here at Border Control, the officers can access all the cameras installed along the country's borders. They can immediately see who is currently entering Spain, at which border crossing.
Maybe this camera is a bit better.
Do we know if they're driving?
It's possible, but we don't have a car registration number yet.
All they know so far is that the woman from Colombia was taken into France from Spain, but not when or in which car. They leave the woman's name and other details and ask for them to be forwarded to all border personnel. Back at her office, Carmen Gonzalez is on the phone to Sebastian Eichler from the Human Trafficking Unit of the Mainz Police Force.
Buenos dias, Carmen. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
As I texted you yesterday, we had some brothel checks a couple of weeks ago, and we encountered 4 Colombian women with Spanish passports. Could you check all the IDs when I give it to you? Maybe the passport numbers, the document numbers?
Okay.
I was wondering because is it easy to get a Spanish passport as Colombian women?
Yes, it is easier. Bear in mind that they own to Ibero-American countries, so they just need to be in Spain 2 years legally, and they can't get the Spanish passport.
So you can check the person in your system with the number of the document, and you can find if she has a residence in Madrid or Spain as well.
Okay, yes, we are going to check it. Yeah, no problem. Also, we are going to check if it is a genuine passport or it is a fraudulent passport.
Being in direct contact with investigators is vital. So I was really glad that we were able to talk and exchange numbers to help advance the cooperation. Of course, everything goes through official channels. We'll exchange information via legal assistance requests if need be. Direct contact can help to speed things up, and it works really smoothly now. But
police work alone is not enough when it comes to tackling human trafficking and forced prostitution. In June 2025, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime hosted the first ever global forum for human trafficking survivors. Over 30 victims came to Vienna to tell their stories. They talked about how their individual vulnerabilities were exploited by criminals, and about systemic causes of exploitation like poverty, displacement, and gender inequality. The event enabled survivors to share their strength and to support and empower others. Betty Pedraza Lozano lives in the Colombian city of Medellin. She has over 30 years' experience working with victims of human trafficking and forced prostitution.
We deal with victims who have been identified, but how many are there who have not been identified, who are still out there somewhere, waiting for us to find them and help them? Sadly, trafficking is soaring and becoming more widespread.
There are many sides to human trafficking, from forced labor and sexual exploitation to organ trafficking. 200,000 cases were reported worldwide between 2020 and 2023, but the actual number of cases is far higher. The UN estimates that several million victims fall prey to human trafficking every year. And according to UN data, over 70% of perpetrators come from organized crime.
The victims only know the name of the first link, the person who recruited them. And the law enforcement is weak, meaning that very few networks are exposed. And when they are, it's only the Colombians on the ground who they catch, not the larger networks involved, just the first contact.
A problem that is also familiar to police in Germany, except that in Germany, if they catch anyone, it's the final link in the chain, the individual who arranges clients for the women. Small fry, but here too, the police are determined to dismantle the structures behind the system.
Sadly, we're still working relatively in the dark. It's going to take some time, but my assumption is that the money all flows together somewhere. With that kind of money at stake, you always have big players pulling the strings.
The fake and the real, I'm a go-getter.
Sebastian Eichler is on his way to Germany's Federal Criminal Investigation Agency. The Wiesbaden office coordinates the work of local and regional police authorities and also liaises with foreign law enforcement bodies. He's here to meet Nicole Baumann from the agency's human trafficking unit. They'll discuss the current investigation.
We now have to place this in a European context and look at what findings they might already have in Spain, Belgium, or the Netherlands. And after pooling our information, we'll look at how we can help you best. I'm confident that we'll get a good outcome.
I'm sure the money all comes together somewhere.
100%.
And if we can figure that out at some point, it'd be good for exposing the networks.
We also need to look at which other cases in Germany follow a similar modus operandi, and we'll incorporate you there too.
I'm sure our colleagues in Spain have valuable information that would really help us to make progress, with Spain being a known point of entry for Latin America.
Securing convictions requires testimony from the affected women. Many of them are scared of the police and say they're engaging in prostitution voluntarily.
It's a protective mechanism that the women sometimes have drummed into them by the gangs. They have to rehearse what to say, saying first that they're doing it voluntarily. Then it's up to the police, perhaps with the help of counselors, to dig deeper and respond to the women and gain their trust. Because you want to see the criminals identified and convicted.
In Wiesbaden, we meet up again with Manuela Sean and her team, now with one gift bag fewer, after visiting the woman from Peru. Were they successful?
Right then we arrived. We saw a neighbour going into the building, which was convenient for us. And then we had this uneasy feeling again, because a little girl with a school backpack passed by us, and you think, this is happening in the same building where she's growing up. We found the right door, and initially she didn't want to open up.
I held up the bag in front of the peephole and said that we were from the city and that we just wanted to talk to her briefly.
And any indications that she was there against her will?
Our impression was that she had a client and therefore couldn't speak for long.
She basically stood at the door wearing a towel.
But she didn't seem to be under duress.
Well, you can't tell just from looking, because they're used to putting on a facade. They have to pretend. If clients see someone who's in a total state of fear, they wouldn't go into the apartment.
The woman left the apartment later that same day and disappeared, probably to another city. Next on the team's list, the address of a trans person from Brazil who they've arranged to meet. There's nobody home, but the neighbours are evidently aware that the holiday apartment is being used by prostitutes who seem to work in rotation. Out of concern for their own safety, the neighbours only agreed to talk to us anonymously.
There's a lot of men coming in and out at pretty short intervals. It gets really loud, and every time I enter the building, there'd be a new man at the door. All I can say is that they have a really demanding day.
And that's after being trafficked across Europe, thousands of miles from home. The survivor we meet at a secret location describes the harrowing, brutal conditions women like her face.
I was sexually exploited for months. I had no control over my own body. There were cameras everywhere, and I had no chance of escaping. They threatened to beat me and said they would kill me.
She was only able to escape that horrific ordeal thanks to an undercover police operation in Germany.
I assumed he was a client, but then he said he was a police officer and showed me his ID, and I broke down and cried and asked him to help me.
She's now in a survivors support program. Her cooperation with the authorities means she can stay in Germany for now, but she hopes to eventually be granted a permanent residence permit. In Mainz, posing as a client is a tactic also used by police investigator Sebastian Eichler and his colleagues to track down victims of forced prostitution.
I found 2 ads in Mainz, and I'm going to reply to one of them now. Languages English and Spanish suggests Latin America.
Today, only one colleague accompanies him. A WhatsApp message directs him to Bad Kreuznach, a half-hour's drive away. They already have the address, but won't be given the name on the door until right before the appointment.
There's a pedestrian zone ahead, so I'll turn around. The sat-nav will redirect me.
They continue on foot, and only now does Sebastian Eichler get the name he'll have to ring at the building's entrance.
Another indication that the apartment is an illegal brothel.
Eichler enters the building first, followed by his colleague. Again, we wait outside. In the Bavarian city of Ingolstadt, this man makes his living from prostitution. Legal prostitution, he says. He uses the pseudonym Werner Frankfurt. The brothel operator, Hell's Angels member and influencer shows off his luxurious lifestyle online, while also promoting his business model. Most of his followers are men.
They love the videos, and I'm very open about it. I did do 7 years.
7 years in prison. He's well versed with the workings of the criminal scene, but is reluctant to talk about what he calls the distant past. He's now been granted a license for this new brothel.
You can't keep saying someone is criminal 10 or 20 years later. There are so many stipulations. A comprehensive police background check, and they also check with the Regional Major Crimes Division. So you really do have to be clean to get a license as a brothel operator.
He insists he's merely a landlord, charging the women €150 a night to rent a room. And he says only legally registered sex workers are allowed. He must have their documentation on hand at all times. Work permit, passport details, and registration as a prostitute.
Next week we have 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 5 arrivals.
Condoms are mandatory. All rooms are fitted with an emergency button. And he must pay tax on his income. Meeting these and other conditions means he loses business to illegal competition from hotels and apartments.
Sure, I lose money. Plenty of brothels have shut down. I know long-time owners who quit and didn't even survive COVID. And when we did reopen, it wasn't a walk in the park either. A lot of the business has shifted to apartments and all the hotels. The women got used to that and then just didn't come back.
Business for him appears to be doing well. The women here say they're working voluntarily and get to keep their earnings. Meanwhile, the topic of legal prostitution is also controversial. Among its critics is sociologist Manuela Schon. She works closely with gynecologist Leanne Bissinger, who accompanies her when visiting sex workers in brothels and apartments.
Oh, ja. Heiß hier bei euch. Ja, so wie wir.
The two women want to see Germany criminalize the purchase of sexual services, as is the case in Sweden. There, clients face serious penalties, but sex workers are not prosecuted. This evening, they're visiting a women's organization to give a talk on the subject. Leanne Bissinger has spent decades supporting sex workers in Hamburg's Reeperbahn red light district. As a doctor, she cannot understand how prostitution can be treated as a normal occupation.
I'm going to briefly show you what penetration by clients 5 times a day, oral, vaginal and anal, does to the body. If this were a regular profession, there would be occupational health standards in place. Looking at the number of penetrations, the degree of force used, over what period of time, by how many individuals, and how many involving the genital or anal area or the mouth, what would be the acceptable limit? It's so absurd. It always impacts on the bodies and souls of these women, yet it's barely discussed.
They see the purchase of sex as a form of violence and buyers as perpetrators, which is why they're calling for a ban on brothels and for fines and jail time for people purchasing sex. Sweden and France have already introduced what is known as the Nordic model. Whether or not Germany could follow suit is the subject of intense debate. The country's conservative parties are pushing for criminalisation. The Wiesbaden authorities have also taken a stand.
October 5th is the International Day of No Prostitution, and for the very first time, the city of Wiesbaden's Women's Welfare Office will be taking part.
That's just nonsense. It's just not possible to ban prostitution. Let's say they passed a law tomorrow demanding that all brothels close down. You reckon that Maria will start working in a supermarket? Jessica will become a cleaner and Rezi will get a job at a fruit and veg store? You think that's going to happen?
Meinst du, das wird passieren?
Attitudes like this are part of the problem, say gynecologist Leanne Bissinger and Manuela Schon. They argue that banning the purchase of sexual services would very much be a solution.
When you take a closer look at those countries where the ban is in place, you see it making progress in the areas that matter to us, curbing human trafficking, and above all, curbing the phenomenon of men being entitled to buy women.
Findings that give them hope. In Bad Kreuznach, we meet back up with the police officers from Mainz after their undercover operation.
In the apartment, we encountered 2 women and 1 young man. We let him go after checking his details and talked to the women. We asked why they were doing this, and when we offered to help them, they declined. It turned out that one of them is actually a customs officer in Romania. But the death of her husband left her with massive debts, which she has to work off.
Debt, poverty, hardship. The reasons are all too familiar. The officers told the women to stop engaging in illegal sex work, but refrained from filing charges against them.
You always take stock of the day's events. We weren't able to help anyone today, but was that really because nobody needed any help?
Then there's the frequent problem of the women's families being threatened back home. The women are wary of making a statement because their families could suffer the consequences. So of course, a lot of them are reluctant to talk. And what can we as German police offer in return?
It's a problem also experienced by Carmen Gonzalez and her team. On the one hand, there is good news. The woman featured in prostitution ads in Paris managed to escape and is in hiding somewhere in France. But she doesn't want to cooperate with the police in France or Spain. France has also criminalized the purchase of sexual services, with buyers facing the prospect of fines or even jail time. But business continues behind closed doors in hotels and apartments, in many cases quite openly.
Prostitution is prohibited in France, but there are still loads of ads online. It's easy to find websites with listings from women offering sexual services. And you above all see women from Latin America. The most common countries of origin are Colombia, Venezuela, and Paraguay.
The business model used by human traffickers works, regardless of whether or not the country in question has banned the purchase of sexual services. Carmen Gonzalez and her colleague Nerea Nieto still need to run a check on the Colombian women's passport details. From Sebastian Eichler's earlier visit to the brothel in Bad Kreuznach. Their papers seem to be in order and not forged.
It's a difficult job and a complex one, because we ultimately know that we can't be everywhere. We'd like to take down every single criminal organization out there and save every victim of human trafficking. Criminal organizations never rest, and so we have to keep working 24/7 too.
Gonzalez says that cooperating with other countries' police forces helps, but they are all up against a daunting foe. In Germany, Manuela Schahn and Nadia Tosa have one last visit to make today, this time in a hotel in the center of Wiesbaden.
She was from Brazil, looked desperately young and extremely thin. We immediately told her why we were there and that this was not legal in a hotel.
Typically, she denied everything. When we showed her the ad, she did then admit it.
This woman left afterwards, without asking for help.
Which we hadn't been expecting.
No, that doesn't happen.
We have seen it in cases where the women have been here longer and eventually call us, very upset, and ask us to come by because they can't take it anymore. So we know a lot of it is a front they put up, and that it takes trust and building up a relationship for them to even call back for help.
An ongoing challenge that requires plenty of patience. Setbacks are frequent. Sebastian Eichler often wonders what would truly help victims of human trafficking.
Personally, I say clients should also be held accountable. But there too, we need the kind of legal framework that enables us to clearly prove offenses. And we currently don't have that.
Ja, das ist eigentlich das, aber ja.
But how quickly might those changes be forthcoming? The German government has tasked an expert panel with reviewing the country's current legislation. Meanwhile, Sebastian Eichler and his colleagues remain on the case in the fight against exploitation.